welcome back to the Wisdom of Odin. Today we're going to be talking about how to tell your friends and family about your religion. Now keep in mind this is coming from my perspective as a Norse pagan, but this can apply to anyone following an alternative religious belief system. And so yes, we're going to talk about how to talk to your friends, your family, your co-workers, and how to address your religion with them in a way that makes sense and will probably not scare them too much. Now, before we move too far along here, I do want to kind of talk about this concept of coming out of the pagan closet, so to speak. And I don't think it's necessarily the way we should look at talking about our religion with others, simply because, you know, coming out of the closet is a very dramatic metaphor. It means you're just coming out, you're telling everyone, and you don't care who knows it. Or you're having a sit down with your family and you're just like, guys, I'm a Norse pagan. And I just don't think that's the way we want to go about it, simply because Christianity is so bad about trying to convert others. And just when you get into a conversation with someone and they start talking about their religion and their intention is to really convert you, or, you know, say they're better than you or something like that. And so when it comes to modern paganism, I don't think we actually want this stigma of trying to convert people. And so I think when bringing up your religion, it needs to be something that's a little bit more subtle. Now, this is going to be something that's going to be different in every situation that you talk about it, depending if it's friends or family. And so I'm going to kind of talk about it when it comes to friends, when it comes to family, it comes to people that you barely know. And just my personal experiences. Again, this is going to be something that is very based off of my personal experiences, you know, sharing this faith with others and talking about it. And, you know, and at this point, finally telling most of the members of my family to some degree. So rather than looking at this as like coming out of the closet and making a big dramatic thing, I think it's going to be a multiple step process. It's going to have many layers depending on someone you're talking to. So I don't know if I have quite, you know, a metaphor for it, but I think it's just going to be something that comes in stages based on who you're talking to. And I think I want to talk about like 4 stages of telling your family. Stage number 1 is you simply tell them you're not a Christian. This is how I started with my father. It is about 10 years ago. I knew I was never going to be a Christian. I knew I did not believe in Christianity. So we were at dinner one night and I just told him that I'm not a Christian and I never will be. And he, of course, was like, well, you know, that's your own path, but, you know, don't tell your mother. And for anyone who doesn't know, my mother is a very devout Christian. My father is Christian as well, but not as, you know, Baptist Southern Kentucky Christian. And so he was the first person I really told. And so we left it like that for years of just me telling him, Dad, I'm not a Christian. And eventually I did tell my mother because she kept trying to talk to me about God and these things. And so I told her, Mom, I'm not a Christian and I never will be. And you should probably just leave it at that. Stage 2 is something that I'm probably at with my mother, you know, maybe in 2015. Because once again, she kept trying to push me and I was just like, Mom, I'm not going to be a Christian. And I have a alternative belief system that I'm very happy for, I'm very, you know, knowledgeable about, and I really enjoy. So stage 2 is letting them know a little bit about your religion. And I think this is maybe where everyone should probably stop. Because again, I don't think religion is something you have to talk about with your family. In fact, I think family is probably one of the, you know, people groups, you know, that you don't have to talk about it with. And, you know, with friends, it's going to be a little bit different because friends are typically, you know, people that you choose to be your friends. So they're going to be a little bit more accepting. But families are complicated, and truly this advice is going to be hardly universal. I'm trying to give you a staging ground here to start a conversation, possibly. But your family situation is going to be different than mine and everyone else's, because it's going to be different for everyone. And so really taking this advice and understanding how far you want to move it with your family is going to be something that is up to you. But again, I think a lot of you are going to fall in that stage 2 category of letting them know you're not a Christian and that you have a different belief system that makes you happy. And that's something I really want to emphasize here, is that if you do mention your religion in any way, make sure that they are aware that it's something that makes you feel whole, it makes you feel happy, makes you feel like you have a purpose in life, and focus on positive aspects of the religion. Now, at this point, I also want to mention that using the term pagan or paganism is maybe not the best way to go about it, simply because they're going to have misconceptions about what is paganism or what are pagans or what a heathen is. And I almost guarantee you it's going to be animal sacrifices, blood offerings, and human sacrifices. And these are things that they're going to fixate on, or are these, these darker aspects from history. And so if you tell them straight out that you're a pagan, these are the places they're going to go. But I have found that just saying an alternative belief system doesn't really give them enough to grasp at, because you could be a Buddhist, you could be, just something New Age, it could be Wicca, it could be pagan, or they just create something in their mind. You could just be a hippie. So that's what I found when talking to my mother, is that this kind of didn't have her ask any questions, but kind of stop the conversation. Now, stage 3 is that you actually do mention your specific points of your religion to some extent. You might give them some simple, like, oh, I do worship gods, I worship, Odin, I worship Thor, or, I do practice shamanism, meditation, and you start getting a little bit more specifics. And stage 3 is going to be something I don't think you go to with a lot of people. My dad is at stage 3. I don't tell him everything, because I don't really see a need to tell him everything. But him and I talk all the time, and so he does ask questions out of pure just being nice to me about my lifestyle. And so I think this is a very good stage. So I think stage 3 should be a great stage to get to with any family members, where you tell them very basic information. You get into a little bit of detail, but you're not really diving deeply into it. So stage 3, I think, is the happiest point you're going to get with any family. But again, I think most people should stay at stage 2, if not stage 1, depending on home situations. And then stage 4 is going to be, you just tell them everything. The only person in my family that I tell everything to is my hippie uncle. Now, anyone that knows my story a little bit, my hippie uncle is a Christian, but he's a very, very, hippie Christian. He grew up in the hippie era, looks like a hippie, smokes an asinine large amount of marijuana, or at least he did back in the day. And so he's got a very, very different view of Christianity. And I've been to Heilung with him. He's literally been front and center of Heilung, dancing around and having a good time. And so it's going to be very rare, I think, in a lot of people's family situation, that you have someone that, you can go to and it's like, yes, I can tell you everything, no sparing of the details. And I can definitely call my uncle whenever I want and just tell him everything, and he's totally down for it. So absolutely love that. I hope you have someone in your family that you can do that with and share everything with, because I do think that's a really healthy thing. But that's, again, something that you're like, oh, I'm going to choose my uncle and I'm going to tell them everything. This is something that builds over years of, family relations, especially once you enter adulthood, of building connections with your family enough that you know that they don't mind these things. So I hope that all makes sense. This section has been very difficult to film, because it's just going to be so different for everyone. Me personally, I really care for my family. I've had a really good childhood. And so going into adulthood, I wanted to maintain a good relationship despite my religious differences with them. But if you do not, have this good relationship, and your family has been very aggressive with Christianity, which I know is something people have told me about, and you just know they will never accept you, I can't give you the advice that will change that forever, but, maybe again, stage 1 of just, hey, I'm not a Christian, deal with it. I think that's where you're gonna have to end yourself with, because you don't want to put yourself through constant conversion and things like that. And so I think just drawing that line in the sand, saying, I am not a Christian, I never will be, and accept that might be the best place to start. But again, just going about that in the way that makes sense for you and your family is going to be up to you. So halfway through this video, I just want to say, if you're enjoying it, make sure you like and subscribe and all that good YouTuber stuff. But I've also written a book that is really good for families to get introduced into Norse mythology or Norse-related themes, so maybe talking about the religion could be a little easier. That book is called A Yule Story. Now, A Yule Story is about a young boy named Eric who meets a mysterious figure named Yule who teaches him how to bring back the magic of the winter season. So far, I've had my very Christian grandmother, my very Christian mother, my father, and an extended amount of my family read this book, and they loved it, they enjoyed it. And not just because I'm part of their family, but also because they legitimately really enjoyed it. And again, it sprinkles in them pagan themes, and so maybe it'll be a little easier to talk about it to them in the future. So if you're interested in picking up this book, it is available on Amazon right now, on paperback, hopefully hardcover here soon, and Kindle. So if you buy this book, you're helping support this channel, what I do here, and when I come up with strange ideas like this. Thank you very much for your support of this book and this channel. Now let's get back to this video. So let's talk about friends. So friends, in theory, again, should be someone that you choose, or some people that you choose to be friends with in your life. So hopefully they're a little bit more accepting. Now, again, this could be different based on your age and whether or not, you know, you are still just like in high school and you have high school friends versus like adult friends. They are different. And so, you know, this could be something that is, again, it's just going to be different for each person. But in my personal experience, so I actually do have two different distinct friend groups. I have my pagan friend group, and then I have my non-pagan friend group, and I maintain both, you know, as best I can. And what I have found works best when it comes to talking about your religion is just act so casual about it. And I think this can even go eventually into the family category if your relationship with your family is good enough, is, you know, just acting like it's not a big deal and not making this big dramatic thing about it of, you know, you're just like hanging out with your friends and you're like, I'm a Norse pagan and I believe in old gods, and why don't you believe in old gods? And I just feel like, again, it can just turn into trying to convert them. And so really talking about it casually in a way that just seems like it's so normal, that it's just a part of your daily life. I think this is the best place to be with friends, and finding friends that allow you to do this. And I think a great example of this is actually today. I am meeting one of my really good friends here in town. I met him through restaurants that I worked at, and him and I have been friends for like 8 years now, I think. And, you know, we just have our own friend group that just hangs out, and they all know me as a pagan. They all know that I do this for a living. And I think it's fun for them when they ask me like, oh, Jacob, what did you do this last weekend? I'm like, oh, you know, just dug a hole and covered myself in mud and chimed some bells, did some chanting, you know, buried some offerings to the ancestors. Pretty standard, you know, pretty standard. And they're like, oh yeah, sounds like a good weekend. Yeah, work's going good, you know. And, you know, it's taken a while to get there, I guess. But at the same time, I think it's a really great, you know, relationship, because they also introduce me as that. You know, when I meet friends through them, they're like, oh yeah, that's Jacob. He's just a pagan, man. You know, he always does like ooh booga stuff and goes around fires and just has a big community of people that all do that stuff. And everyone's just like, oh, okay. And so truly, I do think with friends that if you can get to the point where it's just casual, where you know, they ask you, oh, what did you do last night? Oh, you know, offering to Odin. It's whatever, no big deal. And they're like, oh, cool. You know, I went out with friends. You're like, cool. And I think that's the way it needs to be for paganism to continue to get a good image, is more and more people interacting with non-pagans in a way that is casual. Now, again, you have to be a little careful, and I recommend this in the friends category. We're talking friends right now, of, you know, I don't necessarily do this with everybody. You know, I don't necessarily do this with people I meet on the street unless I'm just like feeling a certain kind of way that day. But, you know, as far as like, you know, everyday friends that you talk to, being casual about it and just acting like nothing's weird, I think is so much fun. You know, I don't know, just try it out. See, I'm sure not everyone's going to like doing it this way, but I've had a lot of fun with it. And again, I have a pretty large friend group outside of the pagan community, and they just really seem to, you know, enjoy having me around. And, you know, in that way, I'm just like, oh yeah, yeah. Poured some meat into a fire, you know, hailed, screamed to the skies, sang a little bit, you know, pretty standard. They're like, oh, cool. It's so great. I don't know if I have more to talk about in this section, but I highly recommend when it comes to your friends, you know, just bring it up small at first. You know, don't try to convert them. Don't try to seem like you're better than them. Just bring it up in small, casual ways. And then I think eventually they'll just really love it and have a good time with it. Okay, so here at the very end, I do want to share, like, coworkers are a weird middle ground of friends and people you don't know, like acquaintances, because you see coworkers all the time, but you might not necessarily be friends with them, so they fit in this weird middle category. And again, it's going to be different based on your relationship with these individual coworkers, but at the bar I've been working at part-time these last couple of months, the coworkers has been kind of funny. I found one that several of them are actually pagan or pagan adjacent or interested. And so I've gotten to a lot of really good in-depth conversations with a few of them, but also in like a serious way. I've really enjoyed you know, being a pagan, but people not necessarily knowing of, you know, just putting in good work, being a hard worker, showing hospitality, you know, being kind, and just really, you know, showing that, hey, you know, I'm a good coworker, I'm here to help you. And then maybe having these slight pagan layers to me is, again, just building this positive pagan image that I think the world needs right now, that I think paganism needs right now. And so, again, you don't necessarily need to force your religion down people's throats, but at least maybe, you know, when it comes to coworkers, being on the surface level of like, maybe you are a pagan, you're following something alternative, but also just being a good employee, then being a good worker, because then people can associate those two things with one another. Again, I don't know, maybe that's just my weird way of thinking about things, but I really do think that as pagans in this modern era, finding ways to help remove these negative stigmas away from paganism, you know, showing that, hey, we're just normal everyday people living our lives as well. We just so happen to also believe in old gods, you know, and do, you know, have altars and things like that. And so I think it's really important that, yeah, we might be the surface level pagan enough that people might recognize a little bit, but then just be a good worker, be a good coworker, be kind, be respectful, and help one another out. So yeah. Hope that makes sense, and I just wanted to share that with you. We have arrived at the end of this video. Thank you so very much for joining me. I hope it's been helpful to you, and I hope this conversation around paganism and how to talk about it with your family, I hope it makes sense. Again, this has been a very hard subject to talk about because it's going to be different for every single person. And so I, again, highly recommend the stage system when it comes to family. Why not be a little casual when it comes to friends? And let's be positive images for our coworkers and the people we meet out there. And let's not try to convert them or force our religion down their throats. So thank you very much for joining me for this video. All these names going down here are the wonderful people that support this channel and make sure it's able to keep running. And so if you want to become one of these names on this list, please go over to Patreon and think about supporting this channel. And there's tons of benefits there as well. So truly, thank you so very much to everyone on this list, to you, the viewer watching this. And again, I hope it was helpful to you. And until the haul, I'm going back in the closet and skull.